Hello everybody, welcome to Tech Tuesday at 2. Today we're going to discuss Adobe After Effects, Adobe's motion graphics platform. It's a huge program, so we're going to jump right into it by going to Composition and then New Composition. The important thing to note is when you first open After Effects, you'll have the option to start a new project, but even after you start a new project, you really can't do anything until you start a new composition within that project. So your compositions will be nested in your project. You can have multiple compositions within a project. So after we open a new composition, we can go ahead and name it. I'm going to name this first one we're going to make today Main, because that's just going to be our main composition where we're going to put everything together at the end. And then down here, you can see that we have all kinds of different settings that we can play with. Different presets. Right now it's set to the default preset, which is HD TV 1080p. That's kind of the standard template that you would use if you wanted to put something on HD TV. Or it's also great for YouTube or any other online video platform. One of the things to note is that means it's in 1920 by 1080 aspect ratio. Below that we see this option for square pixels. There's really only a couple of very specific instances where you would change it to anything else. Below that we have our frame rate, which is by default 29.97. That means for each second of time in our animations that we're going to make today, they're going to be 29.97 frames of animation to work with. So that's basically, you can set that to flat 30 if you want. You can also set that to a film frame rate of 24 or 23.9. But right now we're going to leave it at that. Below that we have this resolution setting, which is different from our aspect ratio. This is only for previewing our animation. So as you'll see, when we start animating things, there'll be our preview window. This is for if we're working on a machine that isn't as powerful, or if we have something really crazy going on the screen. After Effects can bring down the resolution of that, and this is just a default setting that will set that for us. Then we have our start and end time code. It's important to note that it goes hours, then minutes, seconds, and then frames. And so our default duration right now is 0 hours, 00 minutes, 30 seconds, and then 0 frames. If we wanted to, we could set that to 30 seconds and then 15 frames. But for our little animation today, we don't need that much time. We're just going to set ours to 15 seconds. And then after that, we have our background color. This doesn't matter a whole lot unless you don't want to put anything in your background, which you can always change this background color later by going to the composition menu at the top and then going to composition settings. You can change it at any time, but we're going to import some images later, so it's not going to matter a whole lot right now. Now that we have our composition made, you can see it over here in the left panel, which is our project panel, which is where everything that we're going to make is going to end up living for us to be able to use any time. You can see our main composition right there. There'll be more compositions in this window later, as well as some images we're going to bring in. Down here we have our timeline. You'll see this blue little arrow that's pointing down with a blue line. That's our playhead, and that notes where we're at in our timeline. And so we can drag that around to go forward or backward through our timeline if we want to. If we press our spacebar on our keyboard, which automatically tells After Effects to play our animation, you'll see this red line come from out of the blue line. There's nothing animated yet, so you just see the red line. We also have these blue brackets on the beginning and ending of our timeline, and we can drag those in because those are our work area. The blue brackets are our work area start and stop points. So if I drag them in, you will see when I press play or spacebar, the red line that notes where we're at in our timeline will loop in between them. This is helpful for previewing small sections of animation, or if you just want to export later when you're done a small section of an animation, you can do that. You can also drag it back and forth if you would like. You will see though, when I drag the work area in all the way out, I can't go any further than our duration time. To make it longer, I would have to go to composition and then composition settings, edit the duration in there. So to start, we had a picture here on our desktop, of the library. And all we have to do to bring that in is to open our file window and then drag that right over and then drop it right into the program. After Effects imports it, and as you can see, it lives right there in our project panel. To bring it into my timeline, all I have to do is drag it down, and it brings this little blue bar into our timeline. And so now that's a layer of our timeline, and you will see up in the window, the picture's pretty big. It's supposed to be a full picture of the library, but it is expanded beyond what our animation is. Now I could drop these little arrows down, and we have a setting for scale, along with all the other settings for the layer. And I could drag that down by just clicking and dragging, and that would scale it down for me. But I could save more time by not having to try to guess or anything like that, by just going and right-clicking on the image. And there's a menu toward the top that says Transform. And then toward the bottom of that Transform menu, we have Fit to Comp Width. And that just tells After Effects to automatically scale the width of my image to the width of our composition animation, and we get a nice full frame picture of the library now. Now, to begin our actual animation, we're actually going to make a new composition just to demonstrate how the compositions work. So we go to Composition, New Composition, and we can just click OK because all the settings will match, and we want them to match. And we're going to start by going to Layer, New, and then Shape Layer. And we're going to start this animation by going up to under those menus where our tools are. We're going to grab the Pen tool. The hotkey for the Pen tool is G on your keyboard, so if you just want to press G, you can grab it that way too. And off to the left of my animation, where it won't actually be seen, I'm going to set a point by just clicking. And that's automatically going to set a point in my shape layer for this little line that we're going to make. And all I have to do is click over here, and that's going to make a little line for me. It was important that we held down the Shift key because that makes it to where it makes a perfectly straight, flat line. If we didn't hold down the Shift key, I could go over here and make all kinds of weird zigzags, but I don't want that. And you'll see when I did that, all this red showed up because it has what is called a fill to it, this pen tool that we're using right now. And you can adjust the fill up here toward the top where this red rectangle is, and then also we have a stroke, and that's the outline of the shape that we're making, and that's that kind of white rectangle next to it, and it has a number to it. I'm going to press Ctrl-Z a few times to get rid of those zigzags that I just made, and I'm going to bump up the size of that stroke using this number here to the right of that white rectangle. I'm going to make mine, 35. You can make yours whatever width you want, but the higher the number, the thicker that line's going to be. And I'm going to change the color, I'll give it a nice OSU orange. So you can click on that white box, and it'll bring up a color window to where you can pick a new color. You can pick whatever color you want. I'm making mine OSU orange because why not? And so we should have a nice little line on our screen. Does everyone have their line? Good. So now we're going to animate our line. Just like when we went to adjust the size of our library, we can click that arrow next to our layer, and then it has Contents and Transform. We'll click on Contents, and then over here it says Add. Over here on the right, does everyone see that? We'll click on Add, and there will be a little window up here, comes up, and kind of near the bottom, it says Trim Path, or Trim Paths. We'll click on Trim Path. And now we have this option here in this little menu of ours that says Trim Paths 1. We'll click that window, that arrow, and we have 3 different numbers that we can play with. And these numbers control the animation of this line. So if we go to the end, we can bring that down, and we can make it less. We can bring the front up a little bit. If we shrink the line down, we can mess with this offset, and that will allow us to kind of play with that a little bit and have a nice little looping line. But what I'll do is set that to 0, set this back to 100. To animate our line, what we have to do is set a keyframe. And 95% of animation in After Effects happens with keyframes. We'll talk a little bit about animation without keyframes here in a little bit. But to set a keyframe, over here where it's set next to where it says end, there's this little stopwatch icon. This little circle with a line coming off of it. We're going to click on that stopwatch. And you'll notice right here, we have this little blue diamond shape come up, and that's our keyframe. And that keyframe is just data inside After Effects. It tells it what the value of that endpoint needs to be at that point on the timeline. And so with our playhead right there on the keyframe, we'll set that to 0. And so now the endpoint is all the way back to where the start point is. And I'm going to drag my little playhead out to about 2 seconds, and we need to set another keyframe to animate this line. We could do that either by clicking this little diamond box here on the very far left of our screen in our menu of our layer, or because we've already set one keyframe, After Effects will automatically set another keyframe for us if we just change the value over here. So I can click on that 0 next to end, and I'll type in 100%, and it will automatically set a keyframe there for me. So I didn't have to think about setting that point. That's usually very convenient. And as you can see, as we scroll back and forth, that automatically animates between those 2 points in our timeline. Where that gets a little inconvenient is if you're not exactly on that keyframe on your timeline and you change that value, it'll keep automatically setting keyframes for you. And so I might be on the frame next to where that keyframe is actually located, and it'll set a second keyframe, and it'll just do all kinds of weird, wonky things to me. So you want to make sure that you're actually on the keyframe with your blue arrow with the line when you're changing the value of that keyframe if you need to go back and change anything. The easiest way to do that is over here on the left. We have these 2 arrows here offsetting that diamond box. If you click on those, it will automatically jump to the next keyframe. And so I can jump back and forth and make sure that I'm actually directly on that keyframe, because After Effects is very particular about making sure that you're on that keyframe when you're changing it. Otherwise, it's just going to set new keyframes and make a mess. And so trim paths are generally how lines like this are animated in After Effects, and that can be very convenient. Like, say if you're like an electrical engineer and you wanted to give a presentation over a circuit board, and you're designing the circuit board, and you want to make a presentation about how the current's going to move through the circuit board, you could do that with this line. You could add trim paths and have it animate through that. You could also use that to make, like, if you had a map and you're detailing a travel trip that you went on, you could have the points animate in between, like, the cities that you visited to using a trim path. And so usually people like to use those. To do what we did in the video I showed you earlier, we're actually not going to use that. I just wanted to show you that was there because it's very convenient. I'm actually going to make sure that my playhead's out here. I'm going to highlight that trim path and press backspace and get rid of it. So we have no more trim path for now. We will reanimate the line later. And in fact, before we do that, just so we're organized, I'm going to right click on that shape layer, and it is giving me some guff right here. Why is it doing that to me? I guess it doesn't want me to rename it. We'll rename it later. We're going to make our circle now. We'll go to layer, and we're going to make another shape layer. And so new, layer, new, shape layer. And next where we have that pen tool, we have this rectangle tool. We're going to click and hold down on that, and it'll give us a little menu, a little drop-down menu, and we're going to click on the ellipse tool. That's going to make us a circle. And so I'm going to come over here, and kind of above and inwards from my line, I'm going to click and drag and start making that circle. But you'll notice it just makes me an oval, and it's kind of hard to get a nice perfect circle when I'm just dragging it. If you want a perfect circle, you need to hold down the Shift key, and that will give you a perfect circle. And so I want a perfect circle. But I have another problem because it's expanding that circle from where my mouse started, from the corner of that. So as you can see, when I come up to that and then go away, it's making a box with the corner at that mouse point. I want it to expand out from the center of that mouse point. So I'm also going to hold down the Control key on my keyboard while I make that circle, and that will make it expand from the center of where my mouse started. So hold down Shift and Control, and we'll make a perfect circle that starts from where the center of our mouse started, just like that. And I'm actually going to put this behind that line. And so if you've used Photoshop, you've probably seen how layers work. What's on top gets shown on top, and what's on bottom layer gets shown on the bottom. And so I'm going to click and drag that below layer 1, and so now the line goes in front of it. I also want to change the colors of the circle. So I want to get rid of that red dot in the middle because we don't like red here at OSU. And so I'm going to click on Contents, Ellipse, and then down here where it says Fill 1, we're going to click on that arrow. And there's this option for opacity, and it's set at 100, but I'm going to set it to 0, and that's going to get rid of our fill. If we had it kind of up a little bit, you'd be able to see through the red, and the higher to 100, the more solid it is, but we're going to set it to 0. We don't want to see that. I'm also going to change the color of my stroke. I'm going to set that to white like that, and I'm going to set that opacity to, say, 50. So it's kind of see-through. So now we have kind of a see-through circle, no fill. Does anyone have any questions so far? No questions? Does everyone have their circle ready? Oh, question?
I'm very lost.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay. I'm confused. I watched that trim path.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It's okay.
Okay, okay. Let's see how we can get you caught up. Did you make the trim path, or barely? Okay, so we'll go ahead, and I'm going to, while we're working here, go to our shape layer 1 where we made that line, and over here where it said add, we clicked on here and said trim path, and all we did, oh, sorry. Were you able to get it? Cool? We're good? Are you all right? Okay. Where am I losing it? Excuse me, Nina? They also need help. Could you get Carolyn? Carolyn is in the room, I believe. Okay. So we'll have some floaters come by and help you get caught up. They're pretty well versed in After Effects. For the sake of our online audience, we'll go ahead and move forward while Nina and Carolyn help everyone get caught up. So we're going back to our circle here, and we want those little dashes that you saw in the video I showed earlier. Over here we have stroke 1, below opacity, below stroke width. Down here toward the bottom it says dashes. Does everyone see the word dashes on stroke? Has everyone got that?
Sorry.
Oh, so we're going to add some dashes to our circle. So we have a circle here. We have the menu for stroke open. And then we're going to scroll down a little bit, and we have this option here for dashes. And I'm going to click on plus. And that's going to give us some dashes to work with on our circle. And we have a couple of numbers that we can work with those dashes. And you would think this number for dash, if you raised it, you would get more dashes. But After Effects works in reverse sometimes, and it actually gives you less dashes because that number controls the width of the dashes. Does everyone see that? Is everyone able to play with that? So I'm going to go ahead and set that to something that looks good and even. I'm going to set that to 42. Looks right for me. The number below that is offset, and that can just kind of spin it around. We're not going to mess with that for now. But does everyone have the dashes on their circle? Everyone good? Okay, so we're going to have the circle spinning now, just like we had in the video. But you'll notice, if I close this thing for stroke, there are two different options for transform here at the bottom. There's transform ellipse, and then there's just transform. And that's where things get a little bit confusing when you're working with a shape layer. If you go to this bottom one that just says transform, because we're working in a shape layer, when you set a shape layer, it makes an invisible rectangle around our whole video. And so if I try to use this rotation option and I bump that number up, it's going to rotate around in kind of a weird way. Because everyone see this little blue anchor, this blue kind of crosshair here in the middle? That's where this is rotating around. That's called our anchor point. And so over here toward the bottom left, we have this option for anchor point. We could adjust that and try to get the circle to be in the middle of that blue crosshair, but that would take all day. We don't have that, and so we're not going to use that. Instead, we're going to go up here where it says transform ellipse. Does everyone see that? Okay, we're going to use transform ellipse, and then when we use this version of rotation, it rotates in place just the way we want it. Now, like I said earlier, normally in After Effects, we would set a keyframe to make things rotate. But the problem with the keyframe is that after that keyframe, it's going to stop rotating, and we want it to just keep going. Say if I wanted to set this up on a screen all day, and I wanted to keep spinning all day, we'd have to set all kinds of keyframes and do math to make sure that it was spinning at the speed that we wanted, and no one wants to do that. And so this is where we can do animation without keyframes in After Effects. So where we would normally set our keyframe, that stopwatch, next to the word rotation, that circle, before we click it, we're going to hold down the Alt key on our keyboard. So make sure everyone is holding down the Alt key, and then we're going to click on that little circle. And what that should have done for you is it brought up this little text box. Does everyone have the text box open? Everyone good? So right here, we have it says all kinds of weird things. It says content, ellipse, transform, rotation. We're going to backspace that out. And instead, we're going to write the word time. And then we're going to hit asterisk, so Shift 8. That's going to give us an asterisk. And then, did I lose you? And then we're going to type in the number 90, and then semicolon. And be sure you don't hit enter here, because we're done writing our code. But don't hit enter, because if you hit enter, it's just going to give you more lines of code to write. So don't hit enter, hit escape key. Oh, that made that go away. Normally that doesn't do that. So time, asterisk, 90, semicolon, and this time I'm just going to click off of that. So just click somewhere in the gray. It'll get you off. Does everyone have that? Everyone have time, that in there? So if we press the space bar on our keyboard now, we will see that the circle automatically starts rotating for us, and we didn't have to set any keyframes. And so what that little code that we wrote is called an expression. And, oh, we have a question?
Go to the expression one more time and get there.
Okay, so we have our expression. Right next to the word rotation, we have this little circle here. And we're going to hold down the Alt key. So hold down Alt and then click on that circle. And then after you do that, it's going to give you a little text box, and we're going to type in some code there. And the code is time, asterisk, 90, and then a semicolon. And we're going to click off. Were you able to get that? Cool. So there are a ton of different expressions in After Effects, and they can all do all kinds of crazy different things. And some of them are really simple, like this one, just one line of code, super short, really easy to remember. Some of them are like 30 lines long, and you just need to Google that, because ain't no one can remember that. So just Google the expression. But there's all kinds of different expressions. Say you needed a timer counting down in a video, and like you're counting down for a big reveal. There's expressions for that. Again, Google's your friend when it comes to expressions. But right now,
What do we Google to find these?
So what I'd recommend is, like, if you need a countdown timer, just go and Google and type in like After Effects countdown expression.
Okay.
And that would give you a lot of different results for expressions. Oh. So we had that. Does everyone have their circle rotating? Nope. Yep. Just click off so that text box closes. It turns gray again. Did that help? Oh, there we go. Okay. Did you get it? Okay. So, do we have a question?
Wait a minute. So mine says it has an expression.
Okay. Did you put the semicolon at the end of it?
Yeah.
Hmm.
I mean, mine looks like yours. Yeah, don't capitalize it.
Yeah, don't capitalize the T. No capitalization here. There are instances where you do need to capitalize it, but this is one where it's lowercase t.
I know it works. Okay.
Okay, so everyone has that. I think we can go on. So now, this is where we're actually going to reanimate that line going across the screen. And we're going to animate it in a way where that circle actually maps directly to that line, and so the line drags the circle along with it. And so we're going to Contents here, and then Shape, and then here it says Path. And make sure you click this version, because if you don't, After Effects is going to yell at you, and we don't want After Effects to yell at us, because it will. So make sure we have this highlighted here with it says Path 1 and then Path, highlight that. And then we're going to go up here at the top and say Window. And, oh my gosh, why do I not have enough space here to go down? This is concerning, because that was how I planned on animating this. Well, y'all will excuse me. Hey, Nina. Could you click on one of theirs and see if on Window?
Sure.
Because I need to make sure this will work.
Okay.
Does it have all the way to the bottom? Because right now mine is cutting off and I cannot see at the bottom of it.
We have the same way.
Okay. So we're going to go about this a different way. Remember how we set up our trim path? Because we're not going to be able to do what I had originally wanted to do. So let's all add a trim path again. So on this top layer, shape 1, we're going to add our trim path. Does everyone have a trim path added to their shape layer? To the line. Have I lost anyone?
Yes. We're on the window. Sorry.
Okay.
On the window. What are we clicking?
We're not clicking because we don't have a big enough aspect ratio on our laptops to get down to the menu that I wanted, and so we're cut off from doing that.
Okay.
I am very sorry. I should have planned for that. So we're just going to add a trim path again. So a little review on adding a trim path. Go to Shape Layer, Contents, Add, over here on the right, and then toward the bottom, Trim Path. Does everyone have the trim path added? We're going to do the keyframes for that again, so click on that little stopwatch, set that to 0, and I'm going to go out to 2 seconds, and we're going to set that to 100. And we have our keyframes. Does everyone have their trim path keyframed?
I don't even have trim path.
So you go to Contents,
Did that.
then toward the right it says Add, and then Trim Path.
I see it.
Okay. And do you have that menu now?
Yeah, I do.
Okay. Do we need to review how to set the keyframes? Okay. Yes. So for our keyframes, we said this.
So we click on stopwatch.
Yeah, click on the stopwatch, and then you set your value, and then you go out to whatever time you need it, and then you set the second value. So we set the first one to be 0 at the end, and then the second keyframe at 100. Do we have that? Is everyone good on the trim path? Yeah. I went out to 2 seconds, and then I set another keyframe, and I put it our option for end to 100. Next to the word start and end, I'm only animating the word end right now. There's a circle, a white circle with a line coming out of it. And you click that, and that sets your first keyframe. And then after you set that keyframe and set that to 0, we come out to here, and we'll set that to 100. And you don't have to click the stopwatch again the second time. You only have to adjust the number. Did that help? Okay, cool. Any other questions? Are we ready to move on? Okay. So,
What does keyframe mean? I'm trying to.
So a keyframe is these little points that we're setting here on our timeline. And that is telling After Effects that at that point on our timeline, we want this value, this percentage for the word end, to be at whatever specific value at that point in time. And so we set this first one to 0 and the second one to 100. And then every frame in between that is adding up to that 100 from 0. Okay. And so we have that animating. Does everyone have the trim path animated? We'll go ahead and get our circle now. So go to Contents and the second shape layer, Contents, and then we're going to transform Ellipse 1 right here, this menu. We're going to adjust the position now. So where it says position here, we're going to set a keyframe. So make sure we click on that white circle of that little white stopwatch, set that keyframe, and I'm going to grab this arrow up here at the top left. That's our selection tool. Does everyone see that? This white arrow, our selection tool. And we're going to drag that to the left. So off the screen. And then I'm going to come out to 2 seconds where we have our trim path animated to. And I can set a keyframe and drag that back onto the screen. Has everyone been able to do that? Does everyone have their circle keyframed? And so mine comes out just like that, follows the line as it comes out of the screen, and it looks like it's kind of moving along with our line. Is everyone good? Any questions? All right.
Is it supposed to come this way?
What's that?
Mine goes backwards.
Oh, you might have your keyframes reversed. If you need to move your keyframes, you can actually click on them and move them around. And so you might just need to click on those keyframes and drag them out and kind of flip-flop them. And let me know if you're able to do that or if you need any further help with that. So now we're going to go ahead and add our name. So we're going to go up here to Layer and then New. And then instead of Shape Layer, we're going to go this first option here, which is Text Layer. And it automatically brings it up to where we can type in text. As you can see here at the bottom in our timeline, we have this red bar for our text. And I'm going to go ahead and type in my name. So my name is William Davis. Has everyone got that open, their text window open? Is everyone able to write their name? Just let me know if I need to stop. So we can go back and click and drag and highlight all that. And over here on the right panel, After Effects should have automatically opened this little window that says character. And over here we can set the size of our font. And so we can bring it up, make our name nice and big. I'm going to set mine to like maybe 100. And we have options for fonts, Times New Roman, whatever we want it to be. And then we can also set all other kinds of settings right there. Does everyone have their name written on their screen yet? We good to go on that? Does everyone need anyone help getting that there? So I'm going to go out here, and I'm going to drag my name just to where it's kind of over that line, like so. And we're going to animate our name coming up from behind this line and just rising up, so it reveals itself. And to do that, first thing we got to do is put that behind the line, so click and drag your text layer under the top shape layer. Make sure that's under that, and so it should look like a little sandwich with the blue, then the red, and then the blue of our timeline. And we're going to animate our text now. And so we can go in here and go to transform. I'm going to go ahead and go to like 3 seconds. I'm going to set a keyframe. And then I'm actually going to go backward to 2 seconds and then set a second keyframe. And I'm going to drag that down. And so when I go forward, it should rise up. Has everyone been able to do that? Do we have any questions so far about animating our text? So you'll notice the text goes behind the bar, but we want it to kind of disappear before it gets up above that. And we're going to do that with another shape layer. So I'm going to go up to here, layer, new. I'm going to grab a new shape layer. I'm going to go up to where I had that ellipse tool up here at the top. I'm going to click and hold until I get this rectangle tool. Does everyone have the rectangle tool? I'm going to start off by clicking on the red box here and making that white. So we're going to make a white rectangle. I'm going to set this stroke here at the top to 0, so we're not going to have an outline. Does everyone have that set up yet? The rectangle tool? And I'm actually going to make a rectangle starting at the top of our line. I'm going to drag that up over our name, just like that. So the white box should cover our name when we're out here. And then when we're going back in our timeline, it'll go below it. Does everyone have that? We good to go? Does anyone have any questions? Okay. So down here at the bottom, over here, where we have all these checkboxes in our timeline, everyone see these checkboxes? Down below that is this button that says toggle switches / mode or / modes. We want to click that. So if you can find that, it's down at the very bottom of your screen, down below where those checkboxes are. Has everyone been able to find that? Did you find it? Down here at the bottom of our screen, it says toggle switches / modes. I want to make sure you click that. And it changes to where we have these drop-down menus that say none. All of them should say none. We're going to go to our text layer now, where we wrote our name. And in this drop-down menu here in the middle, we're going to click that. We're going to have these 4 options. It says alpha matte, alpha inverted matte, luma matte, and then luma inverted matte. We're going to choose this first option up here, alpha matte. And now my name just disappeared, and you will see, just like magic, it shows up when it rises to where that rectangle we made was. Is everyone there? Has everyone gotten there? Has everyone made their little rectangle and gotten the alpha matte up there? Any questions? Did I lose anybody? Okay. I'm going to assume that we're doing okay. So now we have our little name animated. We have the line coming out and circle spinning, and our name pops up over that line. We're going to go up here, back in our project window, where we have our comp 1, our main, the picture of the library, and our main comp. I'm going to double click on main, and that should bring us back to where we have our picture of the library from earlier. Has everyone gotten there? We can switch back and forth between those 2 windows over here on our timeline. It's kind of like tabs in a web browser. So we have our main, we have our comp 1, we can switch back and forth. I'm going to go over here to main, and I'm going to grab my comp 1, and I'm going to click and drag, and I'm going to drag it over here above my library. Has everyone done that? Click and drag that above your little picture of the library to where it's on the timeline. I'm going to press my space bar, and look, like magic, it should come out over the library. Has everyone gotten that? We have a question.
Okay. Somehow I skipped the step how we click it to drag it. Because every time I try clicking it to dragging it, it switches pages.
It switches pages?
Yeah, I don't know.
Were you clicking it from up here, or were you clicking it from down here?
Down there.
So click and drag it from up here. Yep, we're going to do that. Okay. And so we're up here, and this is going to be the last step that we do. We're going to add a drop shadow to our little nameplate here. Over here on the right, we have this panel where we had set like the size of our font, of our name, and all that. Up here it says Effects and Presets. We're going to click on that, and it's going to load for a second because there's a lot of them. And we're going to have all this huge menu of all these effects we can use. And wow, look at all these effects that we're not going to use because we're going to use this little search bar. We're just going to click on the search bar, and we're going to search for the word drop shadow. And like that, it comes up. Does everyone have drop shadow up on their window? We're going to click and drag the word drop shadow over to our top layer, and that's going to apply a nice little drop shadow for us. And over here on the left, it automatically opened an effects control panel. And so we can bump up the opacity of that, make it darker. I can make it softer if I want. Can bring on the distance. And these are all choices that are up to you. It's your taste of how you want to adjust your drop shadow. If you need to go back to where you had your comps, up in the same window up here in the top left, we have the word project and we have the word effect controls. So just make sure that you know that those tabs are open and that they exist so that you don't get lost, because when I was first learning After Effects, I got lost because I forgot where all this stuff went when I applied an effect. So does everyone have a drop shadow on their layer? Everyone good? All right, so now one last thing I forgot to mention at the very beginning, and this is very important. This is like when I said After Effects is picky, this is what I mean when I say After Effects is picky. Where we have this file for our library, this picture of the library that we have in the background stored, is very important to After Effects, because After Effects has to know where that file is. So like if you're working on a project for a class and you're working on one computer and then you go to another computer and like you have your After Effects project file, and you try to open that, but you don't have the picture of that library in there, you're not going to be able to see it. So I'm just going to demonstrate this really quick. You don't have to do this. I have my After Effects, my library picture in this folder. I'm going to move it out of that. And now when I go to After Effects, it's going to give me this little error, and then it's going to yell at me. And it's going to say, why'd you do that? And it's going to start screaming about where that library picture is. And from here, I have two options. I can either come over here and move this back into that folder, or when we have this project tab open, there's a search bar right here. Does everyone see that search bar? We can type in the word missing, just in case we have more than one thing missing in our project files, because like you can have a lot of different videos, a lot of different folders. Type in missing, it'll tell us that this library here is missing. We'd right click that and then go to replace footage, and then we have to like go find it in the file and tell it that it's right here. And now After Effects is happy with me again. But you just need to be aware of that, to always have your files on like a flash drive and know where they're at so you can tell After Effects in case you're moving around computers. So now, to close this out, we're going to go ahead and export our animation, and you can email it to yourself and be proud of what you made. Or email it to your teacher too, because I'm sure she would love to see. So we're going to go up here where it says Composition, up here at the top, and here at the very middle it says Add to Render Queue. We're going to click on that, and it's bringing up this nice little window here where our timeline was. And there are three things we need to be aware of. There's this word here in blue says Best Settings. If we click on that, it brings up this window. We're not going to mess with this a whole lot because we want it to look our best. And so we're going to leave it here on Best Settings. But if you had other things, like if you needed it to be lower quality, you can change it there. this bottom one here where it says lossless. Go ahead and click on the word lossless. And this is where we're going to set the kind of file that it's going to be. And so there's different kinds of file types for movies and videos. The default on Windows is .avi. Those can get a bit big. They're very good quality, but they can get pretty big. And so we're actually going to set ours to QuickTime right here. So go down that window, click QuickTime. That's going to store it as a .mov. And then all this other stuff we're going to be OK with. We're just going to click OK. And then over here where it says output to, and then it says not specified yet, click on that. And this is where we're going to tell After Effects where to save the file and then what to name the file. And so I'm just going to name mine something like William name. And so you can name it whatever you want. Save it to desktop, save it to your documents. But we're going to save that. And then to actually get it off of After Effects, over here at the very right side of the screen, we have this button that says Render. Does everyone see the Render button? We're going to go ahead and click on Render. And now After Effects is going to come with this blue bar, and that's showing that it's rendering. And rendering, depending on how much you have in your frame and how much is in your, oh, done. You're going to start hearing that sound. And that's a good sound. You want to hear that sound. That's After Effects telling you that you did a good job. But if you have a really big project, then it could take forever. Like it seems to be taking a long time on mine. So sometimes you just got to take a break, go file your taxes, take a road trip, and then come back, and After Effects might be done rendering your file. For those of you who are already done, you've probably already found it. Oh, wow, there we go. It's actually very good noise. It's even more scarier when there's an error, because if there's an error, it has a sheep sound effect, and a sheep baas at you. And it's very scary. And I'm not even kidding. And so mine should be, I muted my laptop, but mine's done. And mine is on my laptop now. Where did I save that to? I saved it to William name. And go over to Quick Access. I can click on that. And just like that, there is my little animation, and Windows is having a hard time keeping up right now. But there it is. So you can go ahead and, if your laptop is connected to Wi-Fi, get on the internet and email that to yourself and your teacher, because I'm sure she would love to see. If we want to save our After Effects project, we'll go to File and then Save. And this is where we're talking about where I'd started off with the difference between a project and a composition. All of your compositions live within that project. I'm going to go ahead and just name it the same thing, William name, and save that to my desktop. If you wanted to email that to yourself, you would also need to remember that you would want to email that photo of the library to yourself too, because when you try to open it, you're going to get that scary screen where it's asking where's the library picture. So if you want to email your After Effects project to yourself, email yourself the library picture too. All right. Any questions? Did I lose anybody? I'm sorry. That was a bit of a After Effects is kind of complicated sometimes. Does anyone else have any other questions? No questions? Jenny, do we have any questions from Twitter?
Not on Twitter.
All right. Well, thank you, everyone.